I ran out of time for that one, so we just have a little bit to finish up for this chapter 6, part 1. Stay angry, little Meg, Mrs. Whatsit whispered. You will need all of your anger now. Without warning, Meg was swept into nothingness again. This time the nothingness was interpreted by a feeling of clammy coldness such she had never felt before. The coldness deepened and swirled all about her and through her and was filled with a new and strange kind of darkness that was a completely tangible thing, a thing that wanted to eat and digest her like some kind of enormous malignant beast of prey. Then the darkness was gone. Had it been the shadow, the black thing? Had they had to travel through it to get to her father? They There was the by now familiar tingling in her hands and feet, and the push through hardness, and she was on her feet, breathless but unharmed, standing beside Calvin and Charles Wallace. Is this Camazotz? Charles Wallace asked as Mrs. Whatsit materialized in front of him. Yes, she answered. Now, let us just stand and get our breath and look around. They were standing on a hill, and as Meg looked about, she felt that if she could easily be on a hill on earth. There were the familiar trees she knew so well at home, birches, pines, maples, and though it was warmer than it had been when they had so precipitously left the apple orchard, there was a faintly autumnal touch in the air. Near them were several small trees with reddened leaves like sumac, and big patch of goldenrod like flowers. As she looked down the hill, she could see the smokestacks of a town, and it might have been any one of any number of familiar towns. There seemed to be nothing strange or different or frightening in the landscape. But Mrs. Whatsit came to her and put her arm around her comfortingly. I can't stay with you here, you know, love, she said. You three children will be on your own. We will be near you. We will be watching you. But you will not be able to see us or ask us for help, and we will not be able to come to you. But is father here? Meg asked tremblingly. Yes. But where? When will we see him? She was poised for running, as though she were going to sprint off immediately to wherever her father was. That I cannot tell you. You will just have to wait until the propitious moment. Charles Wallace looked steadily at Mrs. Whatsit. Are you afraid for us? A little. But if you weren't afraid to do what you did when you were a star, why should you be afraid for us now? But I was afraid, said gently. She looked steadily at each of the three children in turn. You will need help, she told them. But all I am allowed to give to you is a little talisman. Calvin, your great gift is your ability to communicate with all kinds of people. So for you, I will strengthen this gift. Meg, I give you your faults. My faults, Meg cried. Your faults. But I'm always trying to get rid of my faults. Yes, Mrs. Whatsit said. However, I think you'll find that they'll come quite handy on Camazotz. Charles Wallace, for you, I can only give the resilience of your childhood. From somewhere, Mrs. Who's glasses glimmered, and they heard her voice. Calvin, she said, a hint. For you, a hint. Listen well. For that he was a spirit too delicate to act their earthy and abhorred commands, refusing their grand bests, they did confine him by help of the most potent ministers, and it is the most unmitigable rage into a cloven pine, within which rift imprisoned he didst painfully remain. Shakespeare, The Tempest. Where are you, Mrs. Who? Charles Wallace asked. Where is Mrs. Witch? We cannot come to you now, Mrs. Who's voice blew to them like the wind. Wischen bin nicht, das ist berwischt goeth. I do not know everything, still many things I understand. This is for you, Charles. Remember that you do not know everything. Then the voice was directed to Meg. To you, I leave my glasses, little blind as a bat, but do not use them except as a last resort. Save them for the final moment of peril. As she spoke, there was another shimmer of and then it was gone. The voice faded out with it. The spectacles were in Meg's hand. She put them carefully into the breast pocket of her blazer, and the knowledge that they were there somehow made her feel a little less afraid. To all three of you I give my command, Mrs. Witch said. Go down into the town. Go together. Do not let them separate you. Be strong. There was a flicker, and then it vanished. Meg shivered. Mrs. Whatsit must have seen the shiver, for she patted Meg on the shoulder, and then she turned to Calvin. Take care of Meg. I can take care of Meg, Charles Wallace said rather sharply. I always have. Mrs. Whatsit looked at Charles Wallace, and the creaky voice seemed somehow both to soften and to deepen at the same time. Charles Wallace, the danger here is the greatest for you. Why? Because of what you are, just exactly because of what you are, and that by far will be the most vulnerable. You must stay with Meg and Calvin. You must not go off on your own. Beware of pride and arrogance, Charles, for they may betray you. At the tone of Mrs. Whatsit's voice, both warning and frightening, Meg shivered again, and Charles Wallace butted up against Mrs. Whatsit in the way he often did with his mother, whispering, "Now, I think I know what you meant by being afraid." "Only a fool is not afraid," Mrs. Whatsit told them. "Now go." And where she had been, there was only sky and grasses and a small rock. "Come on," Meg said impatiently. "Come on, let's go." And she was completely unaware that her voice was trembling like an aspen leaf. She took Charles Wallace and Calvin each by the hand and started down the hill.